And we really went straight to, here's the solution that we want to build, and here's the big marketing plan around it. And that really cost us months of work. I mean, we took research trips to Asia and to India to like think about the shapes of families and constructs there. And it just was a big waste of time, a lot of swirl and a lot of thrash because we were so focused in on this like really big launch and the competition that was impending, which, in retrospect, we should have really taken the outlook of what's the outcome we're trying to drive, and are there other ways that we can actually make this happen that doesn't need this like net new big feature, but might be actually sub features within products that allow for us to maybe have a row, maybe pick and choose recommendations through an email list. Because like family watch moments also don't happen every day. And so I think that was one of the biggest lessons learned is like, how do you really understand the cohorts of users, the outcomes that you're trying to drive, and then really focus on that versus being solutions and launch oriented. And I think a lot of that still carries with me now at, especially at my time at Hinge and even building this new company. You can be really focused on these splashy, flashy moments to differentiate yourself, but it's not going to matter if the outcomes aren't very clear. You don't really critically understand those core user problems that you're trying to solution around or against.
I feel everyone is now feeling a little bit ashamed in their corner of like, I'm guilty as well. I'm guilty of that as well, and so forth. I'm curious whether the crowd that is listening right now could share some of their stories or even brief moments of it like that. But in the meantime, Marcin, please continue.
I'm actually super interesting story. Like I wonder, Michelle, like actually, well, like when you think about this entire situation, I guess it didn't happen like over the month. You mentioned it was actually a long process to that. And like when actually you embrace that situation awareness that, hey, we are actually not at the situation that we wanted to be. Like, what was the hardest part for that moment when you embraced that? Was it actually working with the team to actually align that was a failure? Maybe that was actually deciding what to do next, or was there something else? Just thinking like, what would you have advised to someone who is actually at the moment of embracing that, hey, we actually did something maybe that didn't go well, like what to do next?
Yeah, no, and I think that's like the biggest thing is like, I think sometimes we have this like sunk cost fallacy that, okay, well, we've already gone this far, and so we should just see it through. And I think that what I would rather have done at that time is to say, like, hey, this is like clearly like not working. We're not getting the insights that we thought we were going to get. And even though we've created launch plans around this and marketing plans around this, it's actually not valuable for us to keep on going down this pathway because the product metrics aren't supporting it. And I think that, in retrospect, like the way that I think about this now is like, there is some level of like, oh darn, I don't want to admit that I'm wrong. Oh darn, we have this entire like working group around like that it's like staff to this project. Like what's going to happen? And I think that, my perspective on this all now is um it takes a lot of courage to say, hey, like we're going down the wrong pathway. Let's stop this now before we invest more time and more capital and more effort for another 1 month. And I think what I try to do is I did the opposite, which is like, how do I placate everybody? Because marketing really wants this thing. I really want to have forge positive relationship with marketing and content. That's materially going to impact their metrics in a positive way if they have another surface area to showcase and push their content out to, while really not kind of calibrating back to like the foundational product outcomes and metrics that we cared about kind of on the tech and engineering and product side, and trying to figure out like what's the actual right balance of those two things. And so yeah, I think a lot of it is like having the courage, number one, to say like we are moving in the wrong direction, and then being able to find that like alternate plan that still gets people to like the correct understanding. And we had we had showcased many moments of that previously, like where we had gone down a very like discovery first route, and I was like, this is not the right direction. We need to like focus on connecting kids with their favorites, with the familiar content, and then we'll get into this discovery kind of work stream. And I think in this particular case, there was just a lot of excitement and I think a lot of energy and momentum around this like Disney Plus launch. And so I think that there's external factors that sometimes you have to push against as well, that say like, just because this other company is doing this thing, it doesn't actually mean that we must follow in those footsteps. And I think that that is definitely something I've seen in many instances where companies see from the outside, oh, this company is doing this thing, we should copy them. And I think that's kind of how sometimes you get into this spiral of having a bunch of features that don't actually solve your particular customer's problems.
Nice. I think that's actually setting the tone perfectly for one of our first theme that we wanted to touch upon, which is actually like metrics that light. Metrics generally, I think that there's like a relationship with metrics with product managers, like it's a love and hate. You know, some of them are actually love them, some actually fear. So let's deep dive in a little bit more. Like, what metrics do we actually did you all actually measure in your life? The light, Kuba. I know that you've been actually looking forward to this section, so I will hand over to you to like share a little bit your story, and then we like go further to Ravi and Michelle.
Yeah, sure. Before that, I wanted to touch base a little bit of what Michelle just said about, figuring out the solution and then finding problem to it a little bit. So 10 years ago, I was a PM in a CRM, and back then our biggest strategy was to move up market slowly because we were in search of our next big wave of growth, and there was such a pressure to step into the competitors' area, to also cater more to managers and VP of sales and who not, to deliver them the perfect insights and perfect reporting systems that really move the needle for them. And we fell in love so much with the idea that we've spent almost a year, I think, on building an innovative sub product that would be delivering back then, deliver reports that were AI driven through machine learning. 10 years ago, it was already, we had a lot of appetite on that, and we prepared all the conversion rate correlators and comparing different parameters of your sales journey. And we were stuck. We were pressured. We felt bad that we are too, not moving as fast as we want. We were validating this and that. And after 6 or 8 months of a huge pressure to deliver this as soon as possible to the market, with all the launch plans, as you were saying, Michelle, heating up behind us. We even piloted this with one of our larger customers. They were pretty satisfied, so we felt, oh, the signal is there. And then there was just this one day when someone asked the question in the room, how many customers like that do we have in our customer base to even capitalize on that soon enough, not looking for the whole new market, and when we will see the ROI? And we just shivered and realizing that, hey, we will not see revenue so soon, basically almost tanked the company. So it was like a major fuck up in my opinion. And I think as a takeaway, as it's a segue to this metrics problem, I would encourage everyone to do what you just said, like think about outcomes first, what business metrics we want to drive, model it. Because if you would start modeling it, you would see the inputs necessary for it, like how many existing customers do you need by month 3 or 6, or how many new customers you need to build pipeline for to even make a sale of what you're just building. And capturing this early evidence as soon as possible and keeping a pace of collecting these evidences could save us, a lot of time and nerves and pressure, and put the money elsewhere in the investments. So, whoa. That was a big one. Another smaller one that I'm guilty of is chasing viral factor for too long. So in one of the companies, we were trying to grow viral effects as much as possible through existing users, sharing out our branding as much as possible if they were on cheaper or free plans, so that other users can learn about us, hit our website and sign up and create this kind of loop. However, we were torturing a lot of experiments, and we actually saw amazing results. So like I guess 300% growth in signups coming from those viral sources. However, only late in the game, we realized who are we bringing is not our ICP. So the traffic mix changed, but the conversions dropped. So it was another major failure of not realizing or admitting it internally that, hey, we are chasing the wrong rabbit. We should rethink what we are doing, who are we attracting, and how to actually create those viral loops that do attract ICP customers. Once we shifted the mind around that, so that it's not always chasing broadly brand recognition, etc., we started seeing positive results that actually brought ICP users. But yeah, that was another big one. So yeah, I'm ashamed. I need to lie down now and breathe. I'm checking just comments. Please do share. It's a psychotherapy for everyone.
Yes, quick reminder, like we are today live. Our special guest is Ravi Mehta, but also Michelle Parsons, and we are here going to learn more about their stories, about metrics that failed, about reorgs that went work, but also unintended usage. But we're super happy also to bring some of your stories. So if you have any story to share, please drop a comment on YouTube or in a chat in our meeting landing page, and we'll definitely try to source some of the one that we will tell in the story in the webinar itself. But maybe still on the topic of metrics, Ravi, do you recall any particular story from metrics from your career you would want to share?
Yeah, there's another example from TripAdvisor. So, we did that big redesign. It just reaffirmed that you have to approach everything experimentally, and you can't really take for granted that something's going to work or not work. And so, one of the key initiatives when I was there was around personalization. TripAdvisor was known for its rankings, so the best hotels according to travelers. And when you would come to TripAdvisor, you would see the list of hotels ranked from most well-reviewed to least well-reviewed. And the problem with that is the most well-reviewed hotels are typically the most expensive, and they're not the ones that the average person is going to book. So oftentimes the first 10 or 20 hotels that a person is seeing would not be the hotels that are most relevant for them, for their budget or their purpose or whatever requirements they have when they're traveling. And so we decided to work on personalization so that every person would be able to see a list that's tailored to them, based not only on traveler reviews and rankings, but also on budget, also on behavioral signals that we had learned about a person as they were using the site. And so in order to do this, we wanted to divide and conquer and get to it on an incremental basis and really prove out that each step of the way we were on the right path. And so the first step for us was for a certain set of users, we typically took anywhere from 5 to 20% of traffic. We would just kind of behind the scenes change the ranking for them and show them a list of hotels that was based on personalization signals. And we did multiple rounds of that testing and actually got to a point where we had about a 10% increase in revenue because we were showing much more relevant hotels to people. And so, that was our first step in creating this kind of just for you algorithm. Our next step was to actually give people some control over that and show them default instead of to the traveler ranking algorithm to a just for you algorithm, and actually have them be able to share some of their preferences and see that list. And so we did a big launch around just for you. We made that the default for everyone on the site. And to our surprise, when we launched it, we actually saw that revenue decreased. And we were really surprised because we had already proven that this algorithm actually works better for folks than the existing traveler ranking algorithm. And so, we were looking at the metrics, and early on, the first couple of days, we were really perplexed at what was going on. And then we started to get feedback from customers that they really disliked the idea that we were picking hotels just for them. Their question was, how could you possibly know what's just for me? I haven't shared that much information with you. And travelers felt a sense of FOMO. They didn't want us to hide hotels from them that were well-reviewed hotels that, maybe, could be a fit for their trip, or might not be a fit for the trip, but they wanted to make the decision. They didn't want us to make the decision about what was just for them. And so that was a really interesting learning around, you can have something that from an algorithmic standpoint works better for users, but the user experience around that matters just as much as the metrics around it. And so we ended up doing a lot of iteration around, what do we call that feature? How do we onboard people into that feature so that they feel really confident about the results? When do we default to it? When do we not default to it? And eventually got to a much more personalized algorithm. And so if you go to TripAdvisor today, you'll see something that's personalized for you. But there was this interesting moment around, it's not just the algorithm, it's also the user experience. And something that might work well when you're not surfacing it to the user might actually backfire when you're putting a name on it and telling users that you're making decisions for them.
Wow. So this resonates as well. I think, what would you say is how to find this balance between giving users control, but also giving them the right solution when it's a better solution for them?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the stakes of the decision. For people who are only booking one or a couple of vacations a year, and they're spending a significant amount of their savings on those vacations, they have to feel in control of that decision. So even though one hotel, they're more likely to book than another, they have to feel a sense of control. I think that's also true in dating, right? Both Michelle and I have experience in that. These are high stakes decisions. It's less true in entertainment, whether it's Netflix or TikTok, the algorithm, or social media. The algorithm can take more control because the cost of seeing the wrong piece of content is much less. And so people are willing to kind of give in to what the algorithm is recommending to them, less so when you have a high stakes decision where they want a sense of control. And they want to make sure that they're seeing the full universe of options and that the company isn't prematurely filtering out what those options are for them.
Yeah, thanks for pinpointing the parameter. Awesome.
Nice. Since we are on a dating topic, actually, I want to move on to the second theme of our conversation today, which are all of the mistakes that we did or we observed through our users related to unintended usage of our products itself. And I actually can bring up a small story at the beginning to warm up a little bit, because I was also having a startup back to 2018, maybe. That was the time when we were building a dating app. We had a very simple hypothesis, people already loved meeting online, Tinder was on fire, obviously, there were more apps. So people used to those behaviors, which swiping left and right and very quickly finding the person to date. But our idea was that our hypothesis was that we would actually make dating more effective if we introduce some kind of engaging mechanism that goes beyond just having conversation with someone. So we introduced a gamification through the dating, basically. So instead of kind of endless swiping, every few hours, our users could receive a new interesting profiles of people that they could actually select some favorites of those people inside of those pack. And that was actually obviously adjusted with some concept of rankings. We were able to categorize people based on their interests, their hobbies. The funny fact was that it actually worked pretty well in terms of the engagement. So we launched pretty quickly. We had actually a couple of hundreds of users in the market. But we started very quickly facing the decision, okay, so how do we earn money? How do we become profitable, actually, in the era when Tinder is actually dominating the market and everyone else is also growing? So following the gamification principles, we've introduced in-app mechanism for like a virtual currency. So it's like simply a micropayment that user could actually pay in order to like open profile more frequently, send some virtual gifts, or even write to people more often, because we had some mechanism limiting that basically. So until that, everything works, we are growing, and we noticed actually that something strange started happening at the moment when we started looking at our revenue, because revenue was growing actually, but surprisingly, it was growing in a little bit strange way, because there was like a very small portion of users that was paying a lot of money. And we started looking at exactly like why it's that basically, right? So the challenge was that there was a growing number of very popular users, more like kind of influencers. Back to 2018, it was like the topic of influencer was actually only growing in a way. But we have figured out that they use our app not to just get engaged with other people, but to gain more fame, gain more popularity, gain more attention. So the other person who was actually interacting with those influencers was very often put in the position of, hey, the person just ghosted them or just built some chemistry with me, and then it suddenly stopped replying because they wanted to receive some gifts, they wanted to receive like more popularity and move this fame from our app into basically their world, whether that was Instagram, whether that was something else. So actually, we struggle to actually reverse back that mechanism for a very, very long time, actually. So I think that's the story. I think one of the moments when I felt that we realized that users don't like use our product often how we designed it. They use it in a way how the incentive rewards them actually, and it's about their reward, right? So that's actually very, very interesting lessons. But maybe I'm very curious, obviously, about your both experience in the dating area. But like, I start with Michelle, with you. Like, what are any unintended or misused product behaviors that you observed in your products?
Yeah, I mean, I think, dating is one of those interesting domains and spaces, because I think that everybody kind of comes in there with it's a human product. It's a product of humans, and so humans are unpredictable. I also think that we, especially at Hinge, like one of the things that, like all companies, you're figuring out like how do you monetize, how do you do that in a way that feels valuable to users, but also kind of adheres to like the core values of the company. I think like one of those such features was probably the roses features on Hinge, and I wouldn't say necessarily like an unintended user error, but I do think like the unintended consequences of roses did create a lot of backlash for Hinge more broadly, that we spent a lot of time as an organization trying to figure out how to like re-articulate what roses are, build in features to support like paid roses, and the feature of roses is called standouts, and you had a section in the app, and I haven't used the product in quite a while, so I'm not even sure it's like this anymore, but at the time the feature was standouts, and basically how the standouts feature worked was that people that were kind of outside of your recommendable set of people would be shown in that section, and you could essentially pay to send them a rose or send them a like. I think in general, like the idea there was like, hey, people want access to people who are outside of the recommendable zone. Also, like people that you send likes to that are outside their recommendable zone will have a less likelihood of resulting in a match, in a conversation, and in a date. And so it's actually beneficial for the entire ecosystem to like recommend people who are more likely to match with you. And that was very much like the ethos of Hinge, unlike some of the other dating apps, which is like was the algorithm was focused on propensity to send a like, and that's really because of how those particular apps created their upsell mechanics for the paid product. So on Hinge, you really didn't have that same kind of mechanics like that operated or kind of ruled the recommendation system. However, I think that it's really hard to explain that to users. It's really difficult to explain that to users, especially when you're looking at the apps like a Bumble, like a Tinder, which at the time dominated the market, and you're presenting in this like net new feature that's trying to like build off of like the super like, for example, that was like prevalent in those other two products, but really slightly different way. And so I think it actually had the unintended consequences, making people feel bad, making people feel like it was like we were purposefully like gating the like desirable people, quote unquote, right? Which we were not. But that was the way that then, you know, people would like talk about us, you know, like in some of the like social channels, etc. But also it kind of like became this like people would come in on a weekly basis to like send their weekly rose that we gave away for free, which was basically our mechanism of trying to mitigate from the like I don't want to be like a try hard standout of sending a rose when everything else is just sent for the hearts. Like now people know that they were outside of like my recommendable zone, right? So we gave everybody a rose for free. And anyway, there's a lot of mistakes that were made in that particular feature that I think ended up having like years worth of just like back and forth, both internally and externally, that we had to kind of build around. I think ultimately we launched Hinge X, which kind of did the same exact thing, but did it in a way that didn't have this like very special artifact associated to it. And so there was other ways for us to kind of get around that. But I do think that people started to like, you know, on TikTok say that if you X out all the people in your standouts category, Hinge will then recommend those to you because it's trying to hide the people that you like the most. And so you had all this kind of unintended like product usage on people trying to circumvent this, you know, feature that was built actually in ways that were overarching detrimental to the algorithm, because like now we're looking at all these X's thinking that you don't like these people, and so it's actually having further negative implications on your overarching experience on the product. But really hard for us to obviously explain the mechanics of exactly what's going on there. And so I think that, you know, some of these types of things are again going back to looking outward at like, what are some of these other competitors monetizing on? What are some of the features that are working for them, and us trying to, you know, not copy those features, but like get something similar to them that didn't necessarily work for our ecosystem or for our users. And I think that was a definite miss for us more broadly as an organization.
And I think there's some parallels to the TripAdvisor use case where, you know, people, especially consumers, are really smart. They don't want to feel like your product is hiding good options from them, whether it's booking a hotel or meeting people online. And so, you know, there's some skepticism or some distrust that consumers might have if they feel like you're doing that, and they will try to work around it if that's the case. And so, you know, establishing trust with users, making it feel like your product is really working for them, I think is essential, because a lot of times consumers are much smarter about the mechanics of a product than we might give them credit for.
I actually have a follow-up question for Ravi or Michelle. Have you ever come to the conclusion that dating could become something for content creator style of OnlyFans and thought, oh, this is not a big market or not going to grow on a certain style, better to drop?
I think that goes to what Marcin was talking about earlier, where every social network has to balance this line between, is it designed for one-to-one or small group interactions, or is it designed for audience building? And I think to some extent that's a one-way road. As soon as you start to cater to content creators and to audience building, there's a lot of structural reasons from a virality standpoint. There's a lot of monetization reasons where you just kind of get pulled in that direction. Instagram has gone in that direction, starting with one-to-one connections and now much more focused on content creators. Facebook has even gone in that direction. There's some interesting examples in dating where like OkCupid and Plenty of Fish went in that direction. And sometimes it can be really good for the business to do that. And OnlyFans, is absolutely a huge business. But it's important to understand, is that really the thing that you're solving for? Or is it essential to preserve the sort of efficacy of one-on-one connection? Because once you go down the path of people building audiences, it's much harder for people to connect one-on-one. And I think both Tinder and Hinge have been very focused on, no, the use case that we want to solve is people who meet one-on-one, people who want to meet offline. That's an interesting and valuable business with a high ARPU. And so it pays to stay really focused on that and to prevent audience building rather than to move in a direction where there might be some pull around audience building. But where the business is serving a very different use case for people, and that may or may not be the optimal thing to do from a business standpoint.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting. It's like always like, how do you decide whether an unexpected user behavior is like a bug to fix, is a business opportunity to embrace, right? It's like constant balancing between like, where are we actually heading based on a strategy. I wanted to bring up maybe one story from the audience. While we are inviting someone, I saw that actually Ruslan actually shared a very interesting story. It's a little bit switching our context from like a B2C, like, and stepping a little bit in a B2B direction. So Ruslan actually shared a very interesting story that he was building a B2B product, and obviously it's always tricky to decide if you want to go, which customers do you target? Do you target smaller customers where you can actually quicker access them, quicker implement and validate if your approach works well, or you hunt rather like an enterprise market where there's much harder to get to the decision, to a validation point? And he actually said that while they were chasing the whale, so like big customers, they lost quite significant momentum because there was like lots of smaller deals that they could make or to quicker validate the product. So it's like he said that at the end, that single decision basically led to like a quite significant product failure where you focus on that bigger enterprise product. Do you actually have any perspective from your experience of actually how to rightfully balance or how to learn from such situations when you need to choose basically between enterprise and like maybe a little bit smaller business?
I think there's a natural pull to always focus on the enterprise. VCs will push in that direction. You can get bigger accounts that way. There's like usually a very replicable sales model. But what we see is like once companies move towards enterprise, that leaves the SMB and the consumer areas open, and then new companies come in. I think that's one of the reasons we constantly see this turnover in terms of companies and disruption, is because of this pull, and then that leaves that opportunity open. And so I think some companies can stay really focused on SMB, but more often than not, just internal factors kind of pull them to focusing on the enterprise, which does create opportunity. And if you can see like in your area that there's a company now that doesn't seem to be taking good enough care of its smaller customers, and the product has gotten too complex and it requires too much customization, that's a really good sign that there's an interesting opportunity to kind of come in and disrupt bottoms up, because the established player is so focused on its biggest customers who have very unique and very specific needs.
That makes sense. Thanks, Ravi, for that response. And also, I want to bring one more person, actually. Do we have Simon here? Hey.
Yeah.
Simon.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Great to have you here. Very curious to hear about your story.
So extremely interesting to talk about, talking about Hinge and Tinder. So I work for We Road. We were born as a group travel company. Our mission is connecting people, culture, and stories. And our goal is to connect people in small groups. We organize in Europe ton of event, kind of meetup style, hiking, running, clubbing, drinking, kind of all these vertical specialized to connect like-minded people. And until a couple of years ago, we used to organize those events on very public platform like Meetup, or anything existing. And then I think we got a bit too bold and ambitious. We release our app. We say we have the audience. We just need to move the audience from A to B, and everything is going to work wonderfully. And we try to do that in the same time in Italy, Spain, UK, France, and Germany. And we changed the supply model. So we wanted to try and monetize the supply side, and we changed too many things at the same time. And we kind of took a very, very big hit on the product, both from a digital acquisition point of view and an operating model point of view. So I think that was the fuck up story that I wanted to share, right? Sometimes your ambition gets you to think that you already have the market and you want to go and grab more, and instead sets you back a little bit. So
Thank
yeah,
you so
very
much for
interesting
sharing
hearing
this
about
story.
the dichotomy between a one-to-one connection and audience building, because actually what we're trying to build is actually in the middle of the two, and I have no idea how well that is going to work out. So
Amazing. Thank you for sharing this. What in your mind you would do differently now that you know what happened? What would be the baby step to take if
I
you
mean,
would have to bet?
I will have definitely started with maybe one country, testing the new operating model in one country, and then go to the others. Very bare minimum, or move the audience from one app to the other, but don't change the supply model at the same time. Yeah, I mean, definitely, baby, I would have taken baby steps.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. We had a first guest that was brave enough to share. So thank you so much. This counts. Thank you.
Nice. Actually, like we keep talking about different product failures, feature failures, organizational failures. I would like to move us a little bit into like the personal space, so like a product leadership, actually. So like maybe starting with you, Michelle, like what's like leadership mistake that changed the way like you manage people or you used to manage people in over your career?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, there's so many stories to share. But I think the one that like comes to mind the most is like really during my time at Hinge, we were growing very quickly. I was employee number 80 there. So just to kind of put it into context. And by the time that I left, we were over 300 and I don't know, 350 people. So that was over the course of 2 years. So very fast growth, both for the team, the product, the organization at large, how we worked. And also trying to balance the needs of like the parent company, the Match Group, who was kind of like, also kind of pushing down their own objectives and outcomes that they wanted to see. And so I think one of the biggest things that I recognized is I was carrying so much competing priorities, so many different streams of work that I was running, but not actually outwardly telling my team, like, here's my list of priorities, here are the things that are on the list, but not high priority. And so I didn't do a really great job of, I think, articulating that. And so sometimes when things would slip or things weren't high priority, that item that was a really high priority to somebody else in the organization, and does that their top priority, my 20th priority, didn't align. And so there like some friction kind of ensued there. And so I think that one of the biggest learnings and that I carried through in many times and even company building now of building my team, my culture, is this kind of like um err towards transparency, right? And it's not saying like, here are all the problems we're facing, but really saying like, here's the most important outcome that we're driving towards right now. Here's the most important priority. Here's why that is the case. And here's kind of like my thought process on how I make decisions on what we should do now, next, and later, and what we're actually going to accomplish. Um, I think that carrying all that simultaneously also just like it burns you out as a leader. And so you're not able to show up in meetings with the same capacity to help coach, to help navigate, to help kind of give that insight. And so I think that was one of the biggest things that I've learned. It's like really a matter of like, how do you become transparent without oversharing? You don't need to share every kind of little detail that, would send someone to like a spiral into to get them anxious, but share enough of the context, share enough of the thought process and the why, and then figure out where you can actually delegate, right? Really like allowing those moments as opportunity for up-leveling, upskilling, visibility for like leadership for other members of your team. And I think that was a lesson that was hard learned, especially when you're kind of new to the managerial world, new to being leader. You've got into that place because you were able to balance and juggle a lot of things, and you were able to deliver on the outcomes. You were doing it kind of yourself in so many capacities. And I think once you shift from IC managing a small team to managing broad teams, to managing broad objectives and outcomes and streams of work, you really have to kind of like reshape the way. Because like a mentor of mine often said, like, what got you here won't get you there. And nothing's ever rang more true in my life. So like all the skills that got me to accelerate my career were actually the things that once I got to that moment of like leadership and acceleration, actually detrimental to my ability to kind of show up as that leader that I wanted to be and that I knew that I was. And I think that is those two things, are still core values of mine now.
Yeah, that's very good perspective. Also on a meta level, like how you actually developed yourself through all of those different principles that you learn, and maybe like trying to go on a micro level a little bit in this space of like fuck ups or like wrong decisions. Like maybe Ravi, looking at you right now, like can you recall any like maybe a meeting where you ended up the meeting and you immediately thought, oh gosh, I could have handled that much better, and like why you are actually like, can you bring us some story about that?
Never happened to me. I think the ones that come to mind specifically in terms of meetings is I think there's meetings where you come together to discuss and where there's enough shared understanding that you can actually debate something and come to a conclusion. A lot of executive meetings, a lot of investor meetings are not that, right? If you come into that meeting hoping to raise a tough challenge and have everyone engage with that and come to a decision and align and then leave with a really clear sense of the decision, that actually can often backfire on you, especially as you get more and more senior. People want you to come in not with a problem, but with a solution. And so oftentimes the meetings I can think of where that's happened to me, it was a matter of not getting everyone aligned before the meeting and having people come in with the shared understanding of what the recommendation is and allowing people to kind of debate, but to debate within a really well-defined framework rather than open-ended. And I think it's very important when you have, especially a group of senior leaders that are coming together, to be clear about what is the purpose of that meeting. Is that meeting to kind of align on a particular recommendation? Is it an open-ended discussion, almost like a design sprint type of discussion? Is it just, for information only? You're just trying to share what the latest is. If you don't have a really clear sense of what your expectation of the meeting is and what everyone else's expectation of the meeting is, you can go in thinking it's one thing and everyone else thinks it's something else, and you can walk out of it not feeling like you've made any progress and actually feeling like things have devolved and potentially eroding your confidence as a leader. And I think this is particularly true for executive and investor meetings where, people aren't looking for you to come in to get answers. They're looking for you to come in with a particular solution that you're communicating really confidently, that you've thought through well, that you're able to answer questions on, and where you can leave the room aligned, not just having people in the room aligned on the direction that you're proposing, but aligned on you as the leader who understands how to drive that forward. And, with that whole group of people giving you sort of the confidence and conviction to move forward.
Such an amazing tips and suggestions, and they deeply resonate. I'm often trying this and winning with this approach of preparing everyone up front to the meeting where we actually meet with everyone. Sometimes I'm failing to do that. Thankfully, today you can use, Loom videos, share some assets, etc. The one risk I can definitely warn everyone around is not to deliver context in an AI slop form. Like, don't throw all the inputs at people,
Yeah.
asking them to read 13-pager, but rather share with them 3 bullet points and the key question at hand. And this is why I think this or that. And let's discuss this quickly, whether we are aligned or not, and bring me more inputs so I can consolidate for everyone so we can iterate towards shared solution, for example, instead of throwing everything at everyone and expecting you'll get great results. So
I think one very tactical tip to add to that is different leaders have very different expectations for how they like to consume information. Some like slide decks, some like memos, some like the recommendation up front, some like it at the back. And so before you go into a meeting and before you share a pre-read, it's helpful to understand, how does this person consume information? Do they like to get into all the details and they'll appreciate all the data? Do they want a really, high confidence, high conviction recommendation up front? And just thinking a little bit about like, how does a person I'm talking to consume information can go a long way towards making those pre-reads and that setup as effective as possible.
100%.
Great. We are reaching already 1 hour. I think we're leaning towards the end. I want to actually encourage us for a small lightning round. So we've shared a lot of different stories from metrics that liked, from some stories from you guys, from your products you worked. So let's play around, Robin. I think Ravi, Michal, Daniele, also Jakub, and me included, plus all in the listeners, we want to encourage you to basically complete one simple sentence. I will, as a product leader, as a product manager, I will never again. And then put your thinking into that process. I can start, like there was lots of wisdom today, but one that actually resonates with me also due to the story that I shared actually, that stays with me obviously for a long time, is like, I will never again assume users want what I designed them actually to want. And I'm passing the ball to Kuba.
This is such a tough one. I think I will never trust the surface output. Meaning, what I mean by this is that when you see either positive or negative signal, don't jump into conclusions too early or prematurely. Really understand the domain, like double click, take it, look at it from different angles, what it means to us, what are the learnings, maybe part of it is working, maybe part of it is not, what can we do from it, and where's the opportunity versus risk, like, really being diligent in forming a judgment, which is scarce these days with AI saying confidently all the different things about stuff. But this was true nevertheless before. I'm nominating Michal.
I'm happy to go. I, as a PM, I will never, I'm gonna give you 2. Say like yes to everything, which was a pain point of mine, but also I'll never ship on a Friday. I have made that mistake so many times, and it's always come back to bite me and my team. And it's just not fun. So I think you can always wait till Monday.
And then for me, I'll never again do a redesign without understanding what are the customer problems that we're trying to solve.
From my side, I will never ever underestimate again user habits. And I was thinking about for the conference to go to a more fancy conference tool. We need, we need the fact that companies can self-onboarding and group purchasing whatsoever. Reality is they still send all the emails and they don't care if you have new functionalities, and they back to Luma. And I also really underestimate the API power of the 16 tool and all the habits that Luma created in these last 2-3 years. So basically I underestimate, basically, I think the power of the ecosystem rather than thinking the functionalities of the tool. And this was huge.
That's awesome. Actually, we also have some comments from the audience. Like I will read out. Like, I will never again assume the alignment meeting is where you actually align. That's a good one as well. Nice. All right. Super. I think that was really, really nice conversations we had all together. I want to say a big thank you to all of you. Also to everyone who listened to us over the last hour. And Daniela, why don't I pass you to also say a couple of words about the conference?
I want to say thank you to the huge community from, I think, DACH region in Poland, and that we reached 260 people join us, and it's really overwhelming. If you want to meet in person, Ravi, for the Leaders Day, the conference, come over to Berlin, the 15 and 17. I think we share 10% discount for the next 20 people. So we will come later on the blaster, and Michelle will close the conference. Coming again, what you said at the beginning, Marcin, that the more we go into the AI, I think the more we have to think about what keeps standing us as a human and where is our judgment goes. Of course, Ravi does this extensively on Reforge, but that's also why our curating went into Michelle, that she's heavily with Lora and other companies in this human factor and the power of judgment. So that's for us. I want to thank you again and a big applause for Ravi and Michelle to come over to make the time. They are pretty sure they're busy people and they make the time for the community. And thank you to the Dodane and Backlogu podcast that you did an amazing job. Regarding fuck ups, tonight it could be not worst. YouTube didn't work at the beginning. My internet break, my everything could have done, but we did a really amazing job. So big applause to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
A few words, you, Ravi or Michelle?
We think Michelle might have some technical issues again just at the end of this webinar. So
or Ravi, what people can expect for the Leaders Day?
Yeah, thanks for having me here today. Definitely join us for the Leaders Day. I'm excited to be in Berlin. I think now is like one of the most intense and difficult times to be a leader. We're going through probably the biggest transition in the history of tech with everything that's happening with AI. We've got, big companies like Google and Microsoft and Apple competing really heavily. We've got these new AI labs that we're competing with. We're also depending on. We've got all these capabilities, all these new problems that we can solve for customers. And so as a leader, we have to distill all of that and figure out how can our company create competitive advantage and solve really well for our customers above and beyond what everyone else can do for them. And that's what we're going to spend Leaders Day talking about. What is the environment like today? What are the challenges? And how can we think about that and really build something where we have a competitive advantage that's durable, that helps us win in the market and win in, I think, one of the most challenging times in tech, but also one of the times that's most rich with opportunity. So I'm excited to see folks there.
Thanks a lot, Ravi. Michelle, tell us more about Lora. Like you just publish in iOS, if they let you. Everybody is super interested about what is Lora actually.
We think Michelle might have still technical problems.
No, okay.
So unfortunately, we might not get an answer.
Can people hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I can't hear anyone, but yeah. So Lora, the company that I'm building, is a product that is focused at the intersection of self-understanding and human connection. Our goal really is to use frameworks such as astrology, which is our starting framework, to help people really reconnect with the major themes across their lives. We combine real life astrologers, spiritual practitioners, so really focused in on kind of the softer side of things, like not forged path, not control, but really everything else, really thinking about how do you bring humanity back to ourselves and all the products that we use, and then use that as a mechanism to connect with other people more deeply. So really the antithesis of swiping fatigue, reactions and comments, but really this idea of if we want to forge deeper, better relationships, build community, that starts with us going deep with ourselves and with everybody else around us. So, yeah, so launching soon to the App Store. Exciting.
Thanks a lot. Guys, should we wrap up? Thanks again to the whole community. Marcin, do you have a few other words?
I think all was said. Meeting to
Thanks,
the books. Thanks, everyone.
See you soon in September in Berlin. Cheers, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.